Welcome friends to another 40k video. Since the days of the Great Crusade, several rogue traders under the warrants of trade have been part of a compact under the Lamertine family. At their head, now they've been asked by the Reborn Primarch to find a way across the Great Rift and reach Imperial Nihilus. The Lamertines must now lead the group and keep the forces together. Spoilers for Void King by Marc Collins, who is working against the group, trying to prevent their task. And why? Friends, let's find out. Soon after the message is received from Roboute, Erastus's father is killed, and the responsibility for the mission is put on his shoulders. As they begin their journey, they are suddenly as a mass thrown out of the warp, and one group, one part of the pact, Norastai, is seen not to reappear with them. So Erastus believes they must have been responsible for his father's death, so they pursue them, and soon catch up with them. And they find not what they expected. It's a debris field. Standing on the observation deck, it was a studying horror. The void was filled with corpses, the macro-scale ruins of murdered ships, spun in the darkness, orbited by flocks of slowly turning human cadavers. Ship death was visceral, traumatic, in a way that few other things were. The Norastai did not deserve such a fate. The Endemica system bled with rift light, with the monstrous anger of the Cicatrix Maledictum. The source of the attack is unknown, and they learn one of the forces with them has been corrupted, and they hear a message. It spoke, and the word was, "Void Father." And then secret enemies are unleashed, hidden amongst their own ships. Now many of the first victims were mere crew, menial labourers and press gang dregs, cut down by precise volleys of fire as the Chosen revealed themselves amongst the fleet of Erastus and his allies. Fanged maws yawned wide, screaming in triumph as they advanced with claws, fingers and many arms, a gene-stealer cult. "Void Father," they screamed on, for the Void Father and the Starborn sons, and so the true traitors are revealed. It was one of the houses allied to them, House Rajexus, who have been infiltrated and now reveal their plan. On one ship allied to Erastus' side, Catala, a native of Fenris, fought. She drove her spear through the scrap iron breastplate of someone who had once been a sworn comrade. He had been crew, trusted, honoured even. She lashed out, not caring that they had once been friends and fellows, that they had served with her for years. Things with whipped, tendril-filled maws lashed out, spitting acidic venom that hissed against the steel and wood. Axes stove in their heads, shattered their skulls, drove them into the decking to be trampled underfoot. They pushed back against the invading hordes of the enemy, driving them back inch by bloody inch. She rouses their blood, and they shout, "Fenris!" The traitor facing them is Maximilian, whose senses danced across the broodmind's psychic link, tasting the emotions of his fellows as they went about their duties. He could feel the guidance of the Void Father, coloured through with the emotional resonance of the cult's leaders. And so it continues against all the ships in the fleet of King Erastus as they fight personnel, sometimes their own personnel, on their own ships. And in the ship-to-ship aspect of the fight, King Erastus targets the Void Father himself, or so he believes, and he fights and confronts Maximilian, the head of the group that had betrayed him. The man did not look human. Erastus says so, and Max admits to being involved in the death of his father. "My father," Erastus breathed. "He was many things, but he did not deserve to die at your hands, to fall to the blade of something so utterly less than a man." Maximilian grabbed at Erastus's blade impotently and could only watch as Erastus dragged it back. A rain of fingers hit the decking, and Erastus wasted no time in driving the sword up and through his throat. Maximilian gasped wordlessly, blood filling his mouth, before Erastus kicked him back. He thrust his bloodied blade to the skies, and the Lamertine's men roared oaths in a roar of triumph. And section by section they take back the ship, until his forces get to the bridge and take that too. Catulla, who has also been fighting, is wounded by one of the cult and manages to pass her last words to her daughter Astrid to carry on the bloodline. Catulla then closes her eyes, prepared for the end, her breathing stilled, and she finally fell terribly silent, and Astrid did not look away. Erastus says he has a plan, and Astrid, now in charge of her ship, says, in response, she trusts him. And he says to the fleet, we endure by the forging of fire, by going through it. Listen to my words. His fleet goes directly for the enemy, intending to go through them. As Erastus puts it, all I wish is to look our enemy in the eye one last time before we're beyond their reach. And he goes for the enemy ship, the lustful Paradox. Shooting with his own ship, the shields failed. But at that moment, the bridge was attacked. Reality opened before him, unfolding in a burst of smouldering, screaming unlight, and Gunther landed, and he fought Erastus. He fights with a sword made from a strange bony metal, and Gunther rants about being the Void King, a brooch Erastus wore from the enemy earlier, deflected an attack with light, and his enemy's blade exploded, and this allowed the once heir, now king, to thrust his sword into his enemy's chest, who escaped death by teleporting away to the anger of Erastus, who swears vengeance, and what remained of the rogue traders' fleet escaped their foes. And now they see if the Drades Gap is safe for the crossing, which is the task the Primarch had given them. And as they are fired on, they enter the warp. The rift clawed at them with febrile, demented longing. Ancient sailors had lashed themselves to the wheel and stopped their ears with wax to keep their course true. Here, the crew of the ships uses their duty to lash them to the ships, even as unreality continued to claw at them. And they fought on, and they limped into real space, having crossed the great rift. They have escaped, but they are lost. The astropaths, all they do is scream into the dark, and the navigators see nothing but shadows and fire. We have been led to a fool's end, Astrid says. Erastus responds, we have crossed into the very mouth of hell, into the lost holdings of the Imperium. I assume he's referring to the Imperial Nihilus there. We are far from home, and we have only our wits and our will and our desire for revenge. And he thinks from that they have a chance. And that is where the tale of the Void King ends in this book, though it feels like there could be more in a future volume. So now, friends, as usual, I turn things over to you. I hope you enjoyed this video. I very much did. Not really done much about the rogue traders before or read much about them, so it's quite insightful. Got any comments? Drop them down below.